Great, we will make a start then. Good morning, everybody. My name's Pete Ashcroft, for those who haven't come across me before. I work for Sygma Solutions. Very short intro because there is a lot of content we're hopefully going to get through this morning on this session. We're a specialist training provider in underground utility location. So anything from the one-day cable location courses up through to the utility mapping 5-day courses, but we specialise in one area of underground utility location. My personal background, I started my life in locators, working for radio detection at the age of 20, long time ago. I worked on radio detection, the people that make the Cat and Jenny and the RD8000 and things that you might be familiar with. I've worked for utility mapping companies, and then Sygma was kind of born in roughly 2005, about 15 years ago, when we decided we'd get more involved with training people. So cable location, I guess, has been my background for pretty much all of my working life. The session I've put together this morning is about getting the best out of plans. If some of you have seen my videos before, you will see some of the content is the same as you might have seen in the videos, but I have tried to update it and add a few things into that to make it a little bit different. Where the session has come from is we often hear objections about utility plans, about inaccuracies, and even to the extent where some people say, oh, it's a waste of time having them, they don't give you enough information and they're wrong and things. And so this presentation is about dealing with some of them objections and showing people what you can get from utility plans, how important they are on site, and a few things just in general about plans when we relate that to locators. So the sections we're going to look at today is when's a stat plan not a stat plan. We're going to look at is street lighting on a plan. We're going to talk about assumed routes, road crossings, is voltage relevant on a plan. Working in private property, do we need plans if we're working in people's gardens, for example? And how can we actually use the plans to assist in a detection survey? Where do they fit in? What benefit can we get from them? Using plans to locate HV, and we'll also talk about the area that a plan should cover. It's broken down into these sections, and I'm happy, and I'm more than happy to take questions as we go along. There are different topics as we go through, so if you've got a question you want to ask, or if you want to jump in, if you just raise your hand, Richard's going to monitor that for me. And as soon as we get to the end of that little section, he'll let me know if there's any questions that we need to go through. So it'd be good to have it as a little bit of a discussion and get you involved as we run through it. So the first bit we talked about is when is a stat plan not a stat plan. And you might wonder what I mean by that. A stat plan, as we call it, is a utility plan. And this is a plan that's issued by the utility company. So it's an individual plan that you would get from the individual utility providers. So for example, you would get an electricity drawing from the electricity supplier, a BT plan, a gas plan. You'd get all these separate plans, and that's what we typically refer to as stats plans, the plans provided by the utility provider. So to give you an example, this is just one street area here. And if we were considering working that footpath and we got the relevant stats plans for that area, we would typically have the electric plan, which is this one from Electricity Northwest, which, for anyone that doesn't know, is showing us the LV cable in orange feeding the buildings. This is the gas plan for that same section of footpath. And this, if people that are inexperienced, this often confuses people because low pressure gas typically on a gas drawing is shown in red. People sometimes look at these and think, oh, it's an electric cable because they have that image of it being red, and red meaning electric, but that's a gas pipe in that same footpath. That's a water pipe in the same section, and this is also virgin media. Again, sometimes that catches people out because it's red. People expect it to be green. So this is what we mean by a stats plan. They're individual plans. So when is a stats plan not a stats plan? When it's actually a PAS 128 level D survey, a desktop survey or a compilation drawing. And that's when we get everything put together on one drawing. So someone's taken the time to gather all that information from the individual stats and put it onto one drawing. And this is a concern I've had that I've raised a few times about these being used more and more on site. as a replacement of individual stats plans. And what I often find with the people that we train is they confuse this level D survey with a detection survey. So because it's all been put on one plan, they think that's actually been located and detected and somebody surveyed that, but it's actually just a collation of those stats plans. And I don't believe in these types of plans being used on their own on site as a replacement for stats, because we don't get all the information across that I believe we need, and it also leads to assumptions. So let me give you one little point on this of what I'm referring to. Anyone that gets a stats plan from the utility company would understand that they're not accurate. They'll give you an idea of what's there or what should be there in that location, but they're not accurate. So for example, this drawing here is showing us there is an LV cable in that footpath, and people you give this plan to would accept that that position of that LV cable could be near the curb, it could be in the middle, it could be near the boundary. But the information we would get from this plan is really just there's an LV cable in that footpath. That's the information we would take from that. Likewise, from the gas drawing, notice also the gas is plastic, so we can't typically detect it with cat and jenny type equipment, which is what a lot of the operators on the ground who do excavations are relying on. And again, the information we would take from this is there's a gas pipe in that footpath. That's it. Onto the water, the same thing. It's telling me there's a water pipe in that footpath. And again, with the virgin media. So the individual stats are telling me there's an electric cable, a gas pipe, a water pipe, and a virgin media cable in that footpath. So what's the problem when we give somebody this? Because when we look at this plan, for an operator on the ground using this plan, what we are now telling him is the electric cable is here, the gas pipe is here, the virgin media is here, and the water pipe is there. But the truth is that they could be in any configuration. The way these cables are put on this plan is just how they've fallen almost. They're just as likely to be in any different combination. So what's the danger with this? If we locate the electric cable with our cat and jenny and we start to excavate and find the electric cable, the assumption now is the gas is on the left hand side. And remember, we can't detect that. But that gas pipe could just as easily be on the right hand side. They could be in any configuration. And this is the thing I find that people misunderstand with these. They take that as gospel, if you like, of how those cables lie in relation to each other. And that's the danger when we look at this. And that's also the difference in a detection survey, because in the detection survey, a level B would have located these. But remember, this is a level D. It's just a desktop survey. So that's a little section, as I said, on when is a stat, not a stat, and the difference between individual stats and also a level D survey. And also look at the information we're missing. For example, offset measurements, pipe material. Why is that important? Can we detect it or not with typical equipment? Same with the water. But when we go and compile it all, there's just too much information to compile onto one drawing. And to me, that's important information that we're missing when we do compile these in one drawing. Any hands raised on that section, Richard? I'm just going to move on to lighting.
Can't see any at the moment. Well, we've got a question just popped in there though.
Go on.
It says, will an advanced combined drawing, including all attributes as metadata, linked to each utility, provide a better solution?
As long as it brings in to me, as long as it brings in enough information, but also we need to ensure, then this comes down to training, I guess. We need to make sure that people that are reading these plans understand that limitation, that even though we are showing them as in a position in relation to each other one, that's just really a guess, isn't it? You know, with the desktop plans, the stats plans. So it's that's the main problem I have with these, is it's the assumption of the position they are in relation to each other. So it's how we bring that across when we do that, and how we make people understand that is my concern when we do it. Because it's something we're seeing on a regular basis now. There's more and more of these surveys being done, these compilation drawings being done. We're turning up on site to do a training course, and we're saying to the guys, can you get your plans out? And rather than bringing out individual stats, they're bringing out a compiled drawing. And you get chatting about it, and it's amazing how many of them don't realise that fact, that, you know, the position in relation to each other could be completely different, you see.
Yeah.
Does that answer that question? I hope it does.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, if it doesn't, Tim, please reply or put your hand up.
No, that's good. Thank you.
I've put my hand up, Richard.
Yeah, great. I've just come to you, Jason. Don't worry, I won't forget you. Yeah, fire away.
P, yeah, I mean, I completely agree about these composite line stat plans that you see, but at Premier Energy, we've been doing this, we've been saying that for years, and our Palm combined drawing is a replica of the actual asset plan. So, you know, dissing all combined drawings, I think, is a bit unfair when, you know, we've been doing it for years, and our plan includes all the attributes, includes all the pipe sizes, directions, material. Because I completely understand, you know, an LP gas pipe is completely different to an HP gas pipe, you know, in terms of what you can do near it. So we've been doing it for a long time with all these combined plans. And hopefully when PAS 128 comes out, the level D combined plan will actually say you have to have all these other attributes on there in order to call it a level D plan. So hopefully, you know, those sort of combined plans will be a thing of the past going forward, and the other ones are a lot better. And we can do things like we can even embed in the plan the actual original report as well. So, you know, there are solutions to this. So I just like, you know, just like to say that not every combined stat plan is a bad one.
Yeah, not all combined ones are equal.
Correct. Yes, that's all I wanted to say.
I had a conversation with somebody just the other week about this, and they said it could be just something as simple as just a little warning on there. You know, when you click on it, it just says, please understand that the position of these in relation to each other, you know, is assumed or whatever. It's just, it's just, you know, that bit of education with it. I'm not dead against them. It's just, it just frightens me that people on the ground aren't told about these limitations when they look at these. And I do see people get mixed up. And what we've started covering in our courses, what's the difference between a D and a B? Because some people do look at that and think it is a detection survey. They think it's, you know, the term GPR survey. You know, they believe it's that as well. So.
Well, perhaps I can give you a sample of our ones for you to talk about on your course to say, you know, this is what you should be looking for as a minimum if you do use one of these.
Please do. Please send it to me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. How do I put my hand down now? I don't know. That's a serious question. I don't know how to take my hand down.
Should be at the top.
Press it again.
Press it again.
Same button, just press it again.
Done it. Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to the next section. One of the other things that I hear quite a lot is, oh, street lighting's not on a plan. You don't see street lighting on a plan. And the truth is that there's no fixed rules about street lighting being on a plan or not on a plan. All across the UK, areas are different, and street lighting configurations are different. And the truth is, sometimes they are on a plan. Excuse me. Street lighting works in two main ways. It's what we call a loop in, loop out system, or a teed off system. So a loop in, loop out system, if you look at the top diagram, is where you have a dedicated lighting cable, and this is typically kind of council-owned cable that will run from column to column to column, completely separate to the LV system, and that quite often, not always, is the one that you don't tend to see on an electricity plan. The teed off system is where it's teed off the LV main. So the LV main that supplies all the houses also supplies the lighting columns, and quite often you don't know if they're going to be on there till you get to site and start looking and using your eyes. Sometimes you can spot it on a plan though, then you can see it. And I want to just show you two very quick examples. This is a Scottish Power plan for anybody that's not seen them. And I don't know at the moment as well, by the way, how experienced everyone is in utility plans, but one of the things that fascinates people when they're quite new to it is there's no standard colour schemes used across the country by the providers. So if you go and look at a Scottish Power plan, they'll have LV as brown on a plan. If you go further north in Scotland and look at SSE, green's LV. Drop down into Northern England and Electricity North West, orange is LV. Go to Western Power and blue's LV. So if you're working all across the UK, it can be a little bit confusing for people to understand these differences we have, even between electricity drawings. But in In Scottish Power, we have Browner's LV, and the red here is the 11 kV. These white squares on a Scottish Power drawing, again, they confuse people. I ask people quite often what these are, and they think the manholes are lids because they're a square box, but they're actually a supply of electricity, and I think they refer to it as like an unmetered supply. So technically what these would be are lighting columns, feeder pillars. I've even had these related to green BT boxes. A lot of the green kind of cabinets now, OpenReach as we call it now, they've actually got power cables to it, and that catches people out. They expect comms cables to them, but they've got power cables to it, and I've seen them denoted on a plan as a white square. But anyway, in this particular case, these are lighting columns. So in this case, they are on the electricity plan. And if we look at the picture of that street, we can actually see this one and this one, and that relates to that one and that one. And in terms of locating with our kit, what this means in this street, it's a street that I've worked in quite a lot, is that we can hook our Jenny up to this column, and this column, and we can actually trace all that network. So we can pick up the whole LV network just by using these columns as connection points, you see. So to give you a comparison, and this is also Scottish Power, and this is just round the corner, so it's very nearby, and it just shows how different things are. If we look at Sutherland Crescent here, the first thing that I notice when I look at that drawing is there is only one white square. So you kind of say to yourself, even before I get to site, I say to myself, how likely is it there is only one lamp column in that whole street? And you kind of think, well, it's not very likely. So if we look at the actual street view, that in this instance is what the white square is relating to. It's that cabinet. But as you can see, I've got a column here, and I've also got a column across the street there. Now, to show you where that relates to, that is here. So if I've got a column here, how does it get its power? So the truth is, what's happened here is Scottish Power have put a supply of electricity in here. Then the local council have gone from that box with their own cable, which comes across the road. It runs down this footpath to that lighting column, and it also runs all the way down here and feeds a row of columns down here, but it's not on the plan. Now, if you're wondering why I point this out, for people working in this footpath, if they just relied on that plan alone, they'd probably think, we're okay here. There's no electric cables in this footpath. But of course, this is where our visual side comes in, because straight away you get to that street and you think, hang on a minute. Well, how does that get its power then? Okay. So it was just to show you two little examples of where sometimes street lighting is on a plan and sometimes it's not. And the other difference when we go back to locating is this is harder work. I have to make more connections with my Jenny and more clipping onto properties to get this entire network. And there's other reasons for that as well, because it's modern and PME and things, but it's just to show you two little differences there where you sometimes see it on a plan and you sometimes don't see it on a plan. On this one, similar one. So this is Western Power. Remember what I said about the different colours? The blue is LV and the red is HV. And if we look, there's houses and a footpath here, which relates to this. So straight away, let's forget the houses, that's obvious as well, but where does this get its power from? This is sat here. So these are the things we think about, and this is why you'll probably hear me, if you follow me on social media, you'll hear me banging on about real world training all the time. It's about taking these plans to a real street and looking for things like this, teaching people this and what to look for. Because it sounds obvious now when we talk about it on this session, but to a lot, it's not. And I've seen so many little mistakes made with situations like this. That's the end of the street light. Any questions, Richard, on that section that have come in?
No, not seen anything. I think it's important to know that the on the USAG report, street lighting cables are typically in a footpath, the ones which are hit most. So it's a key area that we always need to focus on. So yeah, no, it's but don't think any questions. Please, I think as Pete says, please just keep the questions coming. I think it makes it a lot more interactive if you can.
Yeah, I've got one, Rich, on street lighting cables. Pete, it's something we'd love to put into LSBUD, but haven't really got local authorities on board with. And I just wondered what your experience has been in getting that data from local authorities.
I've never, as far as I can remember, I've never had it. And going back years ago, I must admit that's probably because I gave up. I can't remember the last time I actually tried to get it. If I'm honest, it was just one of them things that you didn't seem to get. So it's just sort of something I've asked for a while. We just kind of accept that it's information that isn't typically available. I imagine the other problem is there's so many of them, you know, across the UK, all these small authorities, and I imagine some might keep records, some might not keep records. So yeah, we just don't seem to ask for it anymore, because you generally got told no. So
thank you. No, we'll keep digging, no pun intended, but hopefully get there.
This is probably more relevant to people working on Scottish Power. Scottish Power cover 2 areas. They cover kind of southern Scotland, and they also cover like Cheshire, Merseyside area. They have 2 areas. And one of the things that comes up quite a lot is assumed routes on them. So I've only thrown this in because it does frighten me how many people we train in those areas that don't understand the assumed routes on Scottish Power. So I don't want to spend too long on this, because it's only going to be relevant to some of you. If you do see a Scottish Power plan, quite often you'll see a cable to a property and it will have 2 blue arrows on it. I don't know if I can just zoom in. In fact, you can probably see it better on that one, but you can see we have a blue arrow on either end and the letter A. And these are assumed routes. And again, it's amazing how many people on the course I say, do you know what that means? And they don't. And one of the other things, it might be actually worth speaking to Richard about, is what I've also noticed with Scottish Power is that if you go on their website and you print off a plan, you have 2 templates to select. You can pick the English one or the Scottish one. And it doesn't matter which area you're in, you can still pick either template. You can be working in Merseyside and pick the Scottish template. If you pick the Scottish template, you don't get a key on the bottom. If you pick the English one, you do. It's something I've tried to raise, but not been successful with. And that's, I think, why a lot of people, especially in Scotland, don't know about this, because when they use a Scottish template, there's no key on the bottom, but use the English one and there is. So I tell people in Scotland, when they're printing off plans, to use the English template, and you can imagine how well that goes down when you're telling people to do that in Scotland. But it is important to know for a few reasons. So on this one, as you can see here, we've got 3 services to the buildings, okay, and they've all got blue arrows on. They're all assumed. It's a guess is the best way of describing it. I think what Scottish Power are trying to do here is just make that point that every building has a power supply, and this is why I believe they've done this. But if we look over here, there's no blue arrows here. I still wouldn't take that as being accurate, but this is Scottish Water saying that is where they do believe that goes. And to me, this is Scottish Power saying they haven't got a clue where that one goes, but please assume that every building has a power cable. And the truth again on this site is that this does exactly what this does. It's one feed coming across to all 3. I always laugh at this one, because you think if Scottish Power is saying they believe that's what that one does, don't you think they'd assume that that one might do something similar? But it's just like they've drawn straight lines across to everything. This one at the side is one cable coming in, and this one at the bottom is an interesting one. There's a row of 4 buildings. We've got 3 assumed cables to this one. This one's not assumed. And the truth on this one is that these 3 don't exist. That's the only one that's actually here when you trace it out. And where this causes problems is you have someone doing a location survey here, you know, an operator on the ground who's doing an excavation, and he's scratching his head puzzled why you can't find these. And what we try and teach people to do is, how do we know it's only the one cable? Well, if we hook up to this building with the Jenny, we trace this one, we then hook up to next door. And when we hook up to next door, guess which cable we find? This one. And you get the idea. And so we go through an elimination, and we realise that no matter which of these properties we connect up to, that's the cable we find. So yeah, it was just to point that out. And this one again, these are all assumed, and there's only actually one cable to each of these buildings. So I just thought I'd bring that into it a little bit for anybody that's working on the Scottish Power network, is to watch out for the assumed routes. Any questions coming?
No, don't think so. Unless anyone. No, I don't think so.
Great stuff. The next section is what I call road crossings, and it's knowing the voltage relevant. So it's linking to 2 things. I'm talking about people that are actually working in the road, and some assumptions they might make, and also going back to the compilation side about bringing the voltage across if we are compiling them, and knowing the voltage, is it important to us? One very simple example, water plan. We have someone that's potentially excavating down the road here, or on this side of the road, and what they could easily think, if they weren't trained very well, is, well, the water pipe's over here, I'm okay here. But what we have to consider here is, where do these buildings get the water from? So knowing where that main is, knowing where the building is, we now have to assume that there are going to be connections coming across. But for a lot of people working down here, they might not consider that. It looks clear. So it's understanding that side of it when we're working in roads and what might be across the road. This is one that I quite like. This is a UKPN drawing, and what we've got on here is, it's not easy to read, but on this side of the road, we have a HV cable. There is no LV on this side of the road. And on this side of the road, we have an LV. You'll also notice here, this is in colour, when the HV hits that side of the footpath, it goes back to the old black and white style on here as well. But let's just forget about this bit and look at this. And this is also why voltage is relevant. So we know from an electricity network that you cannot feed a house off a HV cable. It's got to be fed off LV. But the plan is telling me there is no LV cable in that footpath. So what we have to ask is, where does this house get its power from? The nearest LV cable is here, so it is likely it's going to be fed across the road. So we're going to have power road crossings here. And going back to what I said, for someone that's maybe excavating down this road, they might not consider that. They might just assume that, you know, this is fed from that footpath, that's fed from that footpath. But understanding the voltage and understanding the fact that they can't be fed off that HV makes you think about it a bit more. And when we work in this street, when we hook up the transmitter to these houses, they do indeed cross the road. It's one cable per two houses crossing the road. So going back to his voltage relevant, if we compile these onto one plan, but we don't bring that voltage across, that compiled drawing is going to just show an electric cable here and an electric cable here. And the assumption probably will be made that it is fed from there. So that's why I always say I think voltage is important. People often say to me, why does it matter if it's high voltage or low voltage? You know, they're still dangerous. Well, yeah, in terms of hitting them, it doesn't matter that much. But in terms of understanding the network and where things are fed from, I think it is important that we know what voltage these cables are. So again, we've got road crossings here. Another example, Western Power, LV, HV. Where do these houses get the power from? Okay, I'm not guaranteeing they come from here. Well, I do know they come from there because I've worked in the street and located them, but I'm saying I'm not making that guaranteed initially, but it does get us investigating a little bit more. You know, these are crossing the road, etc., to be fed from somewhere else. Same here, nothing here. But when you look at this street, I've not got the picture, there's light columns here, there's housings here, where do they get the power from? You know, it's crossing the road. So these are all things I like to cover. And again, so I keep going about, you know, training in real streets, bringing the real plans there into the streets. And one of the great things about LSBUD is going back, I don't know, 10 years, 8 years ago, it was quite often we'd be training in real streets and we couldn't get the plans for that street. We'd ask the client to get them for us, you know, and you turn up and they wouldn't. So you were trying to use generic plans for other sites in the classroom environment. You'd be getting out to site and you couldn't do this real training event, if you like. But now we can get plans on the same day pretty much anywhere in the UK and bring this into the training. And I think it's been a massive benefit to the training that we can show this in real streets and look at these problems that we have when we're doing the training. Any questions on that section before we move to digging holes in gardens?
One from me, Pete. When you train people, what's the biggest kind of sort of breaking moment with people when they sort of go, you know, is there a sort of false confidence that people have? Is it just the newbies that haven't located before? What typically what do you find from your delegates? So is the biggest sort of revelation when they have the training from you?
You mean relating to plans or just in general?
Yeah, with this sort of content
side of it. I think it's this, what I'm covering today is that how you can get this use out of them. I do think so many people think a plan is just a plan. You look at it and it's giving you information about it. And I think the revelation side of it is how we link it all together, the visual survey, the having the plans in your hand for the street you're in, and then bringing the locator into that, and how we actually use them, not just using them to, it's hard for me to put in words, I guess, but just to tell you where things are, but to get this extra benefit out of them and where things might be and where we could put a transmitter. I think it's that side of it, getting that extra use out of them.
Yeah, no, it's just something I'm just thinking from a strike investigation perspective. We don't often get that level of detail come through in the reports to USAG. of why people, you know, is it a training problem from using a locator, or is it understanding the plans? And it's just having that sort of extra detail to understand where efforts might be focused in future. That's all.
And I also think it's important from a strike investigation point of view. Just one very quick example, and it wasn't this one, but as an example, I've seen cable strike reports where somebody, for example, has hit an LV service to this house here, and the investigation outcome was the cause of the strike was because it wasn't on the plan. I'm sorry, nonsense. You know, there's a building there. It's very clearly got a power cable. Go and hook your transmitter up to it, or find it. You know, but it's that message we try and give to people is, why are you excavating when you haven't found it? And it's that location mentality I always talk about. It's not just about scanning the hole. Does it make a buzzing noise? It's about saying, actually, there might be an LV cable here, an LV main, an LV service. Let's positively locate them. And if you're excavating having not located that, then you're kind of asking for trouble a little bit. So to me, things like this are incorrect reporting, and I see it quite a lot. You know, that wasn't the cause of the strike because it wasn't on the plan. The cause of the strike was because you didn't use your common sense and realise that every building has a power cable to it, and you should have located it before you excavated. So I think that side of it's important.
Thank you.
Sorry, gents, can I just, this is slightly off topic, but it's just hit home with me. I've got something with TfL at the moment with regards to strike reporting. My name's Gavin McKechnie. I'm an ICP for Volker Highways. I do the connections for TfL in London. I do a lot of the mains connections on street lighting and EV and everything in and around London area. So with regards to reporting and tracing and everything else, I came across a damaged cable, and one of my bugbears is we report damaged cables we find. Obviously, we can't work on damaged cables to the DNOs, so we just report it back to the DNO, and obviously we deal with it as we come. We came across what we believe to be a damaged cable. We reported it to TfL. TfL started to treat it as a utility strike. We were obviously playing this out, as we do. UK Power Networks came to it and sort of said there was no load on the cable. UKPN sort of said we could carry on. We started to excavate it back, and what we found is as we traced it back and we dug it out, it ended up being a tail that's been pot-ended about 3 meters back. I've gone on to Google, and 8 years ago there was a bus shelter there that had been removed. So long and short of it, it's basically a bus shelter has been disconnected, the tail's been left in the ground, resurfaced 4 years ago, and whoever's resurfaced has left this mains cable or leg of a cable only 100 mil in the concrete below ground level. They've left it there. Obviously, when we've traced before we've dug, no obviously power, so we didn't pick it up when we've cat and jennied. So when we found it, everything else, no signals, no service, we found it. TfL have obviously reporting this as we've hit a utility, even though we found a damaged cable and everything else. They're going through as we've done a utility strike, even though we've reported it as we found a damaged cable. In everyone's opinion, what would that everyone class that as? Would they class that as a utility strike, even though it's a dead cable in the ground? What's that classed as on reporting to everyone here?
Do you want me to come in on that one?
Yeah.
Anyone?
Different companies you work for do report things differently. So I'm working with one utility company and contractors now. They would call that what latent damage is how they would personally refer to it. The cable that's been previously damaged, and it's happening more and more. There's an interesting article if you Google it. In London alone, I think the article said they have 35 cable explosions a year where nobody's actually excavating, just due to damaged cables in the ground.
But it's not latent damage because there's no load on it, because it's already been pot-ended, because it's had a supply removed. So the bus stop had been removed it had all been pot-ended. So actually, when we excavated back, the cable had been disconnected. We actually removed the 3 meter length of cable. So when we dug back on the cable, it was just a 3 meter piece of cable.
Sorry, I thought you'd said it had been damaged before.
Yeah, so we found a damaged bit of cable. So when we excavated, we found basically the guys lifted up the slabs at 100 mil below. We found a damaged bit of cable. So my guys stopped and gone. We found a damaged bit of cable. So we reported damaged bit of cable. UKPN came out and they stuck a pot end on what we thought was a damaged bit of cable. But when they came out and did the emergency pot end on the damaged bit of cable, they said, "Oh, there's no load on this cable." So obviously we sort of reported back saying, no, it's damaged bit of cable. There was no load on it. TfL sort of said, well, you did it. And we were saying, well, no, there's no load on it. So obviously me being me was like, well, right, track back on the cable. Obviously there's no load on it. We've tracked back and we found a 3 meter piece of cable. But when I went on Google, there was a bus shelter there 3 meters back. So obviously I got my guys to track back on the cable, and obviously 3 meters back, there was another pot end from 8 years ago, and there was just a 3 meter piece of cable in the ground, which we've dug out and exposed a section of cable, because obviously they never strapped it back to the main when they removed the bus stop 8 years ago. So it is just leaving legs of cable in the ground. Obviously, the governance says when you disconnect a unit in the out on the network, when you do a disconnection, you are to strap back where reasonable possible. You are to strap back to the main to stop leaving legs of cable out on the highway.
Yeah. Understand. It just doesn't happen.
No. Where you can. That's what DNOs do. But an ICP, the governance that's put on us is we are to strap back. You are to go back where you can. And if you don't, you are to draw on everything that you do where you have pot ended, giving northings and eastings and everything else to tell the DNOs where you have pot ended that. Yeah. But yeah, it's this.
I don't know what the solution is. If I'm
but this reporting, as far as I'm concerned, that is not a cable strike. There is a dead. It is dead. There is a redundant cable in the ground. As far as I'm concerned, I do not find that this is a utility strike.
Piece of cable.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sort of redundant piece of cable in the ground. There is no utility in there.
Right, I'm going to move on because I'm just conscious of the time. Digging in the garden, we don't need plans. So this is something that comes up, and I know that there's been a few initiatives to try and push this. So it's something we get all the time. We get this quite a lot from local authorities where they have their operatives who tend to be working in properties, fencing, drainage repairs, that kind of thing, and they're working in gardens. And we used to get this quite a lot with some of them where they just wouldn't get plans. And the objections varied from, the main one, they don't show services anyway, we don't need them, etc., etc. We're on private property. So it was just to show you a few examples of why we do need plans if we are working in private property. The first one, we're going to look at the obvious ones. Western Power again. Remember, the blue is LV, the red is HV. So quite clearly, in this person's garden, they have a HV cable in one garden and they have a HVL in LV in the other garden. So if we didn't have those plans working in that garden, we would have no idea that they were in there. So that's the first obvious example of why we need to make sure we get plans even when we're working in private property. This is another example. So this little street view, satellite view. Let's just say, for example, here, let me see if I can get my writing stick to work. No, I can't. Never mind. I'll use. Why is that not working? Never mind. So let's just say we were going to be working down this fence line, replacing this fence, removing these trees, bushes, etc., etc. A lot of people here would think, well, power cable down the footpath, feeds going to the buildings. I'm okay here. But if you look at the plan, this is SSE. So this is what I mentioned before. Green is LV, and you can see straight away we have a power cable going between them because we've got one coming in and then feeding across. So it's just another obvious example of, to try and reinforce that message, we do need plans if we're working in private properties. This one, is one of my favourite plans. It's for a site we go to quite a lot, and it catches so many people out, so many experienced people. These are the houses, and this here is the footpath. This is a UKPN plan. The LV main, I don't know if anybody can see it because it's a tricky one, is actually this black line. The main LV power cable runs all the way through these gardens, right at the front of the houses, all the way down here. This is the LV main. So again, it's just that point that we do get utilities running in private gardens. And the reason this catches people out is so many people think that these green lines are the house services, and this is the actual cable here, but it's not. This is the LV main here. Same on this side, houses here. These are the gardens, remember, that's the footpath, LV main running all the way through people's gardens. So just another obvious example. They're not so obvious. People often say with gas drawings, for example, in particular, they don't show services. So why would we need to bother getting the gas if we're working in somebody's garden? It might not show services, but it will show you the main. And this one, 4 houses here. This is the footpath. Without this plan, I guarantee that everyone would assume the gas pipe runs down the footpath and the houses have a gas pipe going in that way. But with the benefit of the plan, what I now realise is the gas pipes at the back. So if we have people digging or working in the back of here without the plan, they would just automatically assume that everything comes in this way. But having this information with this here, I now start questioning myself and thinking, actually, do we have the gas pipes going in this way? So that's, as I said, the not so obvious one of why we need them. So just a short section on that, but plans are very important, even if you're working in private. Any questions on that before I move on again? Okay for time, by the way, Richard? Yeah,
I think so. I think yeah, we normally say between 45 minutes and an hour, Pete. So yeah, I think
okay.
That's
So this next section is one that's quite important to me. And this is the bit I mentioned to Richard before about really getting the best out of these plans and the benefit they give us when we're doing a location survey. So this is about using the plans to know the best place to apply a transmitter signal. And I'm not going to turn this into a Cat and Jenny training course. So if people are very inexperienced on that side of it, they might struggle to grasp some of these points, but I'll do my best to keep it simple. This is an Electricity Northwest plan for an area near Manchester. So if you remember with Electricity Northwest, it's showing the LV in orange and the HV in red. I'm just going to try and end this slideshow for a second because I can't get my drawing stick to work for some odd reason. Just going to move that down a second. It's just not slideshowing full screen properly. I'm not sure what I've done. No, I can't fix my drawing stick, but I'm just going to carry on rather than trying to waste time fix it. So as I said on this one, so we've got here a HV cable and 2 LV cables. We've got 3 power cables in that footpath. Now, when we go to this footpath with a cat, using the cat in passive modes, power and radio, you can only find 1 signal. As far as the cat's concerned, there's 1 cable in that footpath. We know from the plans that's not true, there's 3. It's just the fact that the signals are merging together. So we need to try and individually identify these cables. And it looks quite complicated. And people say, well, use the Jenny. Well, how? What do I do? So this is where we could get a great benefit from the plans, because let's ignore the HV for now, which is in the middle. House number 27 gets its power supply off the LV cable on the right. And house number 18 gets its power supply, according to the plans, off the cable on the left. So if we were excavating here and we wanted to make sure we'd found both those cables, forgive the pun, this is thinking outside the box a little bit. If we apply a transmitter signal to this property, we're going to light up this cable. We can apply a transmitter signal to this property and light up this cable. And again, these are all real examples of streets I've done this in. This isn't just me guessing at it. We've done this, and they're actually 1/2 metre apart. It's not the fact that they're really, really close, but even so, the cat on power still picks up one signal. As far as it's concerned, there's just one cable there. So we can use these techniques. And what I can even do here, if I can't get a connection here, I can actually just go over here, find this cable on power here, and just drop my Jenny on it here. And that lights up that cable. So we got great benefit from using the plans like that and deciding where do we put the transmitter signal. Some of you might remember this one from one of the videos I did, but this is UKPN, south, east and green for LV. So similar scenario, we got 2 LV cables in this footpath. We are tasked with excavating here. The cat only detects 1. We know there's 2 there. How do we find them? If we zoom out a little bit, so this is the area here, we now realise there's a couple of options here. We say, well, even though it doesn't show the house service, where's house number 1 likely to get its power from? The top cable, house number 14, the bottom. We could even use a column. But the point is, we can apply a Jenny signal to here, we'll light up the top one. A Jenny signal to here, we'll light up the bottom one. And again, we find both cables really easily. So this is what I keep referring to as getting the best out of the plans. It's not just to tell us where things are, it's to help us plan the survey and how we apply that signal to each one and light them both up. So a couple of examples there. Last one, Western Power. You probably get the idea now, everyone. We're excavating here, 2 cables. Cat says there's 1 on power. How do we find them? It doesn't show the house services, but let's think about it. Where does house 12 get its power from? You know, I could be wrong, but it's more than likely going to be here. And you'll soon find that out anyway when you hook up to it. Same here. Or I could even induce. I can induce a signal here and 1 here. But the point is, back here now, I've got both those cables located before I start excavating. One of the big problems we find is that people would scan that, find 1, and they'd still excavate, even though they know they're missing a cable. They might think they're on top of each other. You know, I've got 1 signal because they're stacked, but it's just the fact that those signals merge together. Any questions on that section before I move on to HV? Coming towards the end now, everyone, you'll be happy to know, I guess. Just want to finish off with some locating HV because it's quite a hot topic at the minute. Okay. HV cables are one of the most difficult to detect, and there's various reasons again, and I don't want to turn it into a full-on Cat and Jenny course, but they are one of the most difficult, and that surprises people. People always think high voltage, big signal, but it's not the case. We have lots of factors that quite often mean that the LV cable in a footpath actually gives off a stronger signal than a HV cable. What we also need to take into account is depth as well. The LV tends to be shallower than the HV. Not always, but that's a typical layout in a footpath. So when you've got HV and LV together in a footpath like this, so green LV, red HV, the cat on power tends to pick up the LV, and that's because it's shallower and it's generally got a stronger power signal on it. I could really do with being able to write on this, but I can't. So let me go back up. So one of the other reasons why I say that HV is one of the hardest ones to detect is because it's very difficult unless you've got access to a substation to actually connect a transmitter signal to it. There's loads of ways I can show you how to connect a transmitter to an LV using lots of different street furniture and connection points, etc. But when it comes to connecting or clamping to a HV, it's very, very difficult unless you've got the right access. So the only option for us is to induce a signal, which means putting the Jenny on top of it. However, in this instance, if I try to put the Jenny on top of the HV, because the LV is shallower, so if you kind of imagine the LV being kind of, I don't know, 400 mil deep and the HV 700, think 3-dimensionally, when the Jenny's here, we still end up lighting up the LV. So we're on site, the plans tell us there's a HV cable there, and we can't find it. We've tried to induce onto it, we've used power and radio, we're missing it. So what do we do? And this is where the plans come in again. If we just zoom out, here we go. What we can see now is a bit further up the street, we've got some separation. So remember, the reason I'm unable to induce onto the HV here is the presence of the LV. So if we get up here where the LV is away from it, we can now induce our Jenny signal onto the HV here, and that means we can find it here. Okay, so another use for plans in that respect. Similar kind of thing here, everyone. HV and LV, no matter where I induce on this footpath, I really struggle picking up that HV, can't find it. So what we do is we put the Jenny over here, and that gives us a perfect signal on the HV over here. So it's another great use of plans in relation to how we plan a detection survey. And finally, on that same point, it leads on to quite nicely, does size matter? Just to show you 2 examples, and this is why I'm a big fan of people who are actually in offices producing plans, to have a little bit of training on this, to know what's relevant. That's a zoomed in version. A lot of people would think that's better. They think they're doing you a favour by really zooming in and giving you more detail. But to me, in terms of a location survey, that doesn't help. If you try to locate that with a cat, it's going to be difficult. There's going to be signals everywhere. But if I zoom out, I can see a bit more. I can now see where to apply my transmitter. I could put a transmitter signal here to trace back in. So I'm trying to trace back in rather than out. And I could apply my transmitter in different positions here. It's never going to be perfect, it's difficult, but I can get much better results with that information and knowing where to apply that signal than that information. That's the end of my slides, everyone. I honestly do hope it was useful, but I'm happy now to answer any questions or discuss anything else anybody wants to discuss. I don't know if anybody's hands have been raised while I was doing that section, Richard, but shall I end the slideshow?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Pete. So I'm sure, yeah. So please, any questions for Pete, or statements, or commentary, or food for thought? Anyone got anything?
Yeah, just as a sorry, go on.
Go on, Pete.
No, I was going to say, just as a comment, really, Pete. Well, obviously we are involved at LSBUD providing these plans, thousands and thousands of times every day. But for me personally, I don't get hands on with them. As a general comment, I just found that incredibly helpful to see, the benefits and the limitations of those plans that we're dishing out. So thanks very much for putting the presentation on.
No problem. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Great. So thanks, Ben. We've got next up is Tori. Tori.
Thanks. Thanks for a great presentation, Pete. I think you outlined very well sort of both how you get the value from the stats and also how you might need a deeper understanding of the detection methods and the limitations, and maybe even understanding of uncertainty, both of the maps and the plans. The maps and the detection methods. What's your general view on the contractor society's ability to use these methods to understand, not just reading the map, but also understand how you actually can detect and what you can't detect?
I'm not sure I understand what he was asking, Tori. Just rephrase that question a little bit for me.
Sure. What is your understanding of the general contractor society, the general sort of excavating contractor ability to operate the way you prescribe here, to understand those limitations, understand the uncertainties?
I think one of the things that we come across quite a lot, which is where this presentation came from in general, is the negative view of plans. I think that's the first challenge, is that automatic, to be blunt, the crap. They don't help. It's pointless having them. You'll see it on posts sometimes. Oh, you're wasting your time looking at the plans. They're not that accurate. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we see quite a lot, is that negative attitude. And again, this is where this came from. It's to say, look, they might not be accurate. They might be missing information, but the way you're using them, you're not getting the best out of them. There's other ways we can use these plans that will help. So I think that's one hurdle, is that negative reaction towards them, which needs addressing. There are other uses for them. And a lot of the training we do, what I've just gone through with you, people aren't using them that way. And I had this conversation with Richard the other day. Once you show it, it's all obvious. Everyone's like, oh yeah, that's really obvious that. Of course we can do that with them, but it's until you actually lead them down that path a little bit and say, have you considered doing this with them? They don't. Going back to the local authority that I talked about, that we do a lot of work with years ago, they never give the guys plans for private properties. As soon as a couple of the safety people came on the course, it was like, wow, bang on. So what do they do now? They all get plans. So it was nothing they're deliberately doing wrong. It was just a little bit lack of understanding of how they could get extra information from them, especially with like the gas one, for example. Never give them gas because they don't show services, but they show the main. We have the main position. We know where the building is. It's got to get there somehow, So those are some of the challenges we face. I hope that answers your question anyway, Tori.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you both. Phil, over to you. I think probably time for this last question, and then we better head off.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, Pete, just a quick question, really. You're collecting all of this data from the site in a survey. What's the usual process at the end of that survey, other than paint marks on the ground as to what is where? Is this data? Is it normally fed back in a survey report to those actually working on the ground, or really what happens to all that valuable data that you've got from detecting the cables and pipes? Usually, that's my question.
Yeah, usually nothing, because it's a training. So what we do is we're doing probably 5 or 6 courses a day at the minute with my team. So we're doing this, all over the UK in loads of different streets. But it is a training exercise. So we'll go along and do a 1-day course, just as an example. We do the theory in the classroom, and then we'll drive. What we'll often do is, and this is what I mentioned before about the great thing about LSBUD for us, is that they talk about a practical area. And well, sometimes what they'll want you to do is literally go on the site car park or the compound where you've got one cable feeding the cabin. Well, can we not do it here? And it's like, no. So we open up Google Maps, we find a nearby street where we've got lighting, comms, LV, HV, and we just find it on Google Maps. We go on Street View and say, right, that's what we're going to do in the training, guys. Jump in your vehicles, off we pop. We go onto the LSBUD website, pull up a plan. By the time we get to site, I've got that on my phone as a PDF. It might just be the electric, sometimes it's the gas as well. And then we relate all that together and we do that survey in the street. But it is a training exercise, so we don't do anything from that point on. There's a lot of some of the major contractors we deal with now. We're doing actual on-the-job training. So we're doing the initial course at the beginning, and then 3 months later we'll actually go and visit them on site. But these are a lot of the work we do are for the people that are doing utility replacement works. So they don't get surveys done initially, by a PAS 128 survey. They're doing down a whole street, for example, replacing the water main for a plastic one, or putting water meters in down this street. So they're doing small areas, and in terms of what they're using the information for, they're literally digging there and then. They want to make sure they've got everything marked out, and then they're digging on it, and then it's reinstated. So there is nothing really from that perspective that does come back or get taken away from it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it just seems a shame, when there's all of these, surveys being performed, that the location data that's more precise than probably what's on the maps, that's not being recorded and fed back. So I guess that was probably my question.
No, we just don't do anything with it. It's just purely training. We go out there, and the only thing we do with it is that if you saw my folder, I've got a full folder on plans. I've been collecting them for years. Like some people collect stamps, I collect plans, and what I might do is save good examples, or if I see something that's a bit, and that's where the stuff I've shown you's come from, just examples I've collected over the years that I thought that makes a nice point, that when I try and explain something to people. So
okay, thanks, Pete.
Yeah, there's just a slight plug for UK Power Networks. Really, they've got we're working with them to get the survey information or information where the assets aren't as per the plans, particularly in the southeast at the moment. So there is a link going out with every plan response from UK Power Networks in an Ofgem funded trial to get that data back in, to try and get it from people out on site that are working near it, because there's such an opportunity there. Phil, I think, as you sort of allude to, is that, Pete, I know you've got your library of plans, but there's people out there working out every day with the same sort of information, and it's a really good opportunity to make it better for the next person. So yeah, that's it's something we're working on at the moment, just as sort of background information. Pete, I think that's been fab. Thank you very much indeed. I think
no problem.
Anyone, and I think as we said yesterday, it's simple stuff, but really useful. And it's only simple when you've got someone that knows this stuff as well as you do. So thank you very much indeed for that.
No problem. Richard, can I just have a little bit of a plug before I go? And it's a value one I hold. If I don't know how many follow me on social media, I've been running some free sessions like this on getting the best out of the Jenny. So we've done getting the best out of the plans. and it goes into more detail about the things I was trying to show you very briefly then. And if anybody wants me to run one of them free of charge for your organisation or you, just please drop me an email. I'll jump online, 45 minutes with you, and just run through some more locator specific stuff. And it is training. It's not, you know, a webinar trying to sell you something. So quite happily send me an email if you want to learn a bit more about the location side of it for anybody that's not got that experience.
Great stuff. And Pete, I'm sure you're happy if anyone emails us the marketing at LSBUD account, then we'll provide Pete's details.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll just share. So that's the email address there for anyone that needs it. And just another quick plug from us is that the next session is on the 18th of March, and that is a perspective on behavioural safety. So we often hear through the strike reporting angle is that, oh, it's behaviour of people on site that's an issue, and I think those that have looked into strike investigations might sort of recognise that that's not quite as simple as it might sound. So a really interesting perspective on behavioural safety next time. Just to say thank you very much for everyone's input. Hope you've enjoyed it. If there's anything that we can do to keep improving these sessions, please do let us know. Really do appreciate feedback. So if either it's in the chat or via email or dropping us a ring or whatever it might be, really appreciate your time this morning. So, and hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah,
thanks very much,
everyone.
Pete.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.